Hello everybody, Raven Knight here. Today we're looking at another Toon video, and guys, I do want to stress, I'm not actively looking to go after this guy. I know that I've been going after a couple of his videos now, and this is not like a personal attempt to, hate on this guy or just to ridicule him. It's honestly not my intention. What usually happens is my fans send me videos from him, I see them, and sometimes they're hits, other times they're spectacular misses. Like, he can make good videos. I've seen him make some decent quality videos that I can honestly say were pretty good. And then other times he makes videos so outlandishly silly that I have to go, did AI write this script for you? It's kind of hard to tell. Today is kind of both, actually. So today we're looking at a video that he recently released about how evil tries to justify itself. A very interesting topic to discuss, because how do you justify evil? How do you commit evil acts and then justify your deeds? It's a very unique talking point that you can have from a psychological standpoint, a theological standpoint, a philosophical standpoint. There are lots of ways you can approach the problem of evil and justification of it. And what he chooses to do is he takes a look at two Disney villains, Judge Claude Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Jafar from Aladdin, and he uses these two characters as case studies to really discuss evil. Now, for the first half of the video where he focuses on Frollo, he actually does incredibly well. It is 100% spot on. And I would even invite him to go further on that analysis of Frollo. Hell, maybe I should do it. I'd love to actually take a look at the song Hellfire and really break down all the fascinating aspects of that song that make it so powerful from a theological and personal perspective. So honestly, for that first half, absolutely awesome. But we're not looking at that first half today, because we're looking at the second half of the video where he goes on Jafar. And wow, does he fumble this. So, yeah, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get ready to jump into this. Let's change out my avatar for something fitting. What can I use that will fit? I mean, we could make it kind of focus on Frollo. We could make it focus on Jafar. We'll use this. Yeah, I've used that before. We'll use this. All right, that'll do. All right. Let's see where Toon goes wrong. We're going to actually pick up once he finishes talking about Frollo and jumps into Jafar. If you want to watch the full video for context, I will link the video in the description so you can check it out there. But let's jump into this. Let's go.
But if Frollo is evil disguised as virtue, Jafar is evil on another level, maybe even the worst kind. There's no prayer in Jafar's mind. He doesn't quote scripture or appeal to virtue. He doesn't want to purify the world. There's no higher calling, only one unshakable truth. He deserves power, especially the one the lamp provides.
Bring me the lamp. The rest of the treasure is yours, but the lamp is mine.
When anyone hears that, they would immediately assume that this tall, angular man, speaking with a hypnotic cadence, owns a lamp that needs retrieving. He claims ownership with so much intensity that you would call this lamp Jafar's.
No, we don't. Why would we make that assumption? You see, when Jafar says this, he very clearly is stating that of all the treasure found in the Cave of Wonders, the only thing he wants is the lamp. It does not mean he already owns it or that it belongs to him, only that he desires it. I feel like that was abundantly clear. What person watching this would say, oh, right, he must have lost that lamp some time ago and just wants it back? Because that's obviously the takeaway from that dialogue, sure.
This is what makes him dangerous. His sense of entitlement is off the roof, and it is what fuels everything he does. He's chasing power, a title, and a crown he believes is his birthright.
All right, and here lies the big crux of where Toon fumbles. It is this point right here where I think Toon has really fumbled the ball. This assumption that Jafar thinks he deserves power, that it's his by right or by birth. Where at any point was this stated or suggested in the film? When did Jafar claim at any point that he deserves the title of Sultan, that he deserves that power, that he, so for some reason, needed it because he was cheated out of it? It is his birthright to be Sultan and to have power. He's never said that. I challenge you, go rewatch the movie. He never said that. And I promise you that not at any point will Toon ever present that evidence. You see, if you want to sum up Jafar's motivation in one scene, just one scene, take the scene where he says to Aladdin, you've heard of the golden rule, haven't you? Whoever has the gold makes the rules. All you have to do is replace the word gold in that statement with power. He with power makes the rules. He with power rules over others. Jafar wants power because he wants to rule. He's power hungry. Jafar has learned of a secret cave. Let's look at this from Jafar's perspective. He learns of a secret cave, a cave that no one else knows about. And he knows that within this cave is an all-powerful genie that will grant him any 3 wishes he wants. He's the only one who knows about this, and he sees this as a chance to claim power for himself by getting that genie. There is absolutely no scene where he says, I deserve to be Sultan. The crown was mine by right. I was cheated out of this. This is not fair. Never. He's never said that. Because here's the thing. He knows it's not his by right. He knows it's not. This is a moment where I think Toon is trying desperately to apply a motivation that was not there. But we'll see where he goes with this.
How he walks, talks, and acts portrays this sense of entitlement. Even his loud and sarcastic sidekick parrot, Iago, complements his prideful and domineering personality.
Jeez, where'd you dig this bozo up?
Okay. I gotta ask. Again, I feel like I asked this in all of your videos, Toon, but I'm gonna ask again. Do you use AI to make your videos? Please roll this back. Roll back the clip.
Even his loud and sarcastic sidekick parrot, Iago, complements his prideful and domineering personality.
Jeez, where'd you dig this bozo up?
So, what Toon says is, quote, even Iago praises Jafar's ego and pride. Your example is?
Jeez, where'd you dig this bozo up?
Do I need to say more? Is that really an example of Iago praising Jafar's ego and pride, or asking him where he found the thief that he used here? Iago's literally just asking, where did you get this henchman? How is this? This is so sad because the beginning of this video was really good, and now I'm kind of like, really, bro? Tell me, did you edit this yourself? Do you pay editors, or is this all done through AI? I genuinely want to know.
While his aesthetic screams villain, his actual philosophy is rooted in something disturbingly familiar: the belief that magic and ambition should naturally lead to power. Jafar is introduced as a calculating political operative, the royal vizier of Agrabah. From the very first scene, we learn something crucial about him. He already has immense influence, but he doesn't see it that way. To him, power is binary. You either have all of it or none at all. Hence, he sees himself as undervalued, a genius forced to serve fools, a rightful king trapped in a servant's robes.
Jafar, my most trusted advisor, I am in desperate need of your wisdom.
In Jafar's mind, the natural order has been violated. Therefore, correcting it by force, deception, or magic isn't wrong, it's justice.
And it is here that I once again must ask, where did you get this idea? When did Jafar state that he was seeking justice? When did Jafar imply that he felt he had no power? See, Jafar is well aware that he does have power, but it's just not enough power. I think you're right that Jafar sees himself as a servant to fools, and he probably feels some degree of resentment for that, but at the same time, let's pretend like the Sultan was honestly a very responsible, respectful man that Jafar could respect. Jafar isn't seeking power because the wrong person is in power, but because he just craves the throne. Let's be honest, does he ever sit back and say, man, the wrong Sultan is ruling, I could be a better Sultan? No, he never says that. He just recognizes the current Sultan's a nitwit, and I want to be Sultan instead. He does not say it is because the Sultan is a nitwit that he wants to take over. He's not saying it's because he wants to seek justice. No, there's no scene or moment where Jafar exposits some backstory or mistreatment or dethronement or cheating. Look, he's not Hades from Hercules, who was jealous of his older brother's position on Olympus. He's not Scar from Lion King, who resented Mufasa for being made king and then having a son, thus preventing him from ever reaching the status of king. He's not Prince Hans from Frozen, who had several brothers ahead of him in line for the throne and thus wanted a quick and easy path to royalty. There's none of that with Jafar. He is well aware he has no claimancy. He just wants it because those who get a taste of power want more of it. At what point do we ever see Jafar justify his behavior? You know, it's kind of funny. In a lot of these scenes where we, like, for example, take Hans from Frozen. He's explaining to Anna why he's betraying her. He's explaining his rationale, his justification, the reason for his evil. Jafar never explains to anyone why he wants to be Sultan. He just wants power. Why? Because even a child understands the nature of evil people will crave power for their own ends. That's not a hard concept to grasp.
Psychologists describe this as malignant entitlement, when someone believes their unmet desires are a form of injustice, and any means to correct that injustice is fair game.
Again, when did Jafar claim him not being Sultan was an injustice? No, I'm dead serious. Give me a clip. Give me a line. Give me something that implies it is unjust that I am not Sultan. When does Jafar ever present himself as a victim? Ooh, man.
This is a form of grandiose narcissism, a psychological profile marked by an inflated sense of self-importance, constant fantasies of unlimited power and brilliance, and a lack of empathy that allows for the exploitation of others without remorse.
I will be Sultan, not that addle-pated toy.
But what makes Jafar especially dangerous is that his narcissism doesn't stay political. It becomes supernatural. The fact that he knows a bit of magic drives him to become the very axis around which the universe spins. He doesn't manipulate people by earning their trust, he does it by warping their senses. For Jafar, magic is proof. Proof that he's superior, that he was always meant to rule. He weaponizes it, and he justifies his every step deeper into darkness by believing that because he can do these things, he should be omnipotent.
Okay, now see, hold on. You're touching on something there. You're scratching the surface of the point. Jafar worships one thing: power. He wants it more than anything. He has some hypnotic powers with his staff, and he also has a lot of hidden knowledge, but the extent of his ambition is to be crowned Sultan. But once he's crowned as Sultan, he's not satisfied. He wants more, so he wishes next to be a sorcerer, to have even more power. And then Aladdin, recognizing Jafar's blind obsession with power, points out he's still not as powerful as the genie. Genie has far more magic than Jafar, and Jafar, ever hungry for more power, wishes to be a genie, without ever stopping to think about the cost of that wish. You're scratching the surface of the whole point of Jafar's character, a man driven by a thirst for power, and that very thirst for power was his undoing. In fact, it's kind of a major theme of the movie. When you really break it down, both Aladdin and Jafar craved power. In fact, Jafar, Aladdin, and Jasmine all crave status or power or something. Aladdin wants power and status so that he can get out of his poor lifestyle and marry the woman of his dreams. Jasmine wants out of her life as a princess because she wants to get out of the shackles that make her have to marry someone else. And Jafar wants power because he just wants to be Sultan and wants to rule over other people. Every character in this story, in fact, you know what? I'm going to go this far. This is a little side tangent. Bear with me. One of the major themes of Aladdin is the escape of slavery. Aladdin is a slave to his position as a street rat. Jasmine is a slave to her status as a princess and having to marry someone. The genie is a slave to whoever holds the lamp. And Jafar, I guess you could make the argument, is a slave to a very stupid sultan. But Jafar has power. He controls the sultan. He uses his hypnotism to control the sultan. In fact, we hear the guard say he can't obey Jasmine's request because his orders come from Jafar. Jafar has power. He has position. He has status. The only thing Jafar is truly a slave to is his own obsession with power. And everyone wants to break free from their slavery except for Jafar. He doesn't recognize his bondage. He doesn't recognize the problem. Aladdin manages to break free when he gets the genie and has him wish him to make him a prince. But once he gets that power, once he gets what he always wanted, he realizes this is not what I thought it was. I'm having to live a lie. I'm having to deceive everyone around me. I'm pushing my friends away. I'm not sure I can do this. And that distances himself from Abu, the carpet, genie. He's about to lose everything. Jasmine, when she escapes from the palace to go wandering, discovers the outside world is nothing like what she thought. It's a scarier place than she thought, but she found a guy who she really likes, only to find out that that guy gets supposedly killed, and that breaks her heart. But then she starts to find hope in Prince Ali, and that's a whole other thing, and she starts to find freedom from her shackles in finding actual, genuine love. What about the genie? The genie eventually finds a friendship in Aladdin, and Aladdin sets him free quite literally. And finally, you have Jafar, who had all the power at one point, He was technically the ruler of Agrabah and getting more and more power until finally his ambition and desire for power enslaved him. So the roles are now reversed. The one who had all the power is now the slave to someone else. Those who were enslaved to their own positions were broken free from. That's kind of the theme of the movie. Now, let's go back to your talk about Jafar. You're saying that Jafar feels he's suffering an injustice. What injustice? The dude has the power. If anything, he has more power than the Sultan because he can control the Sultan. In fact, one question I often asked when I was younger and watching this movie is, why does Jafar want to be Sultan? He already rules Agrabah. Why does he want to do that? He already kind of rules Agrabah. Why does he want this? And I have a theory on that, and we'll get into it later. My point is this, and I'm sorry for the long tangent. I really am. I know that I really went off on this. But my point is this. You were really touching a point. You were really touching a point here. I don't think you quite hit it, though. If you just dug a little deeper, you would have realized that Jafar's the wrong villain to really analyze for this. Because Jafar doesn't ever justify his actions because, in his mind, power is its own reward. I have power, it's not enough power, I'm going to get more power. That's his justification. There's no, well, look, you got to understand why. Look, I was treated badly. Look, I've suffered an injustice. Jafar never does that. See, in order to justify your actions to someone, you first have to recognize that what you've done is wrong. You have to recognize, hey, I've done something bad. Let me make sure you understand why what I've did is okay. Or at least let me explain to you the necessary reason for this evil. Jafar, he knows he's evil and he's unapologetic for it. He just wants power. That's all there is to it. I understood that as a kid, but anyway, whatever. I'm sorry for the tangent. Let's keep going.
Think about how early the film starts showing us this. He uses his hypnotic serpent staff to control the Sultan, a symbol of royalty, literally bowing to Jafar's will.
The diamond.
Here, Jafar.
Then he uses the same magic to identify the diamond in the rough, aka Aladdin.
Yes, there he is.
However, this is where he fails to see another flaw in himself. The Cave of Wonders only opens to someone it deems a diamond in the rough, a person who appears insignificant but is truly worthy. This is a devastating blow to Jafar's ego. Despite all his cunning, the universe itself doesn't see him as worthy. Instead of reevaluating himself, he doubles down. This is cognitive dissonance in action. Jafar's identity is so wrapped in the belief that he deserves power, he can't allow this rejection to mean anything real. So, what does he do? He attempts to steal worthiness. He tries to control the cave. He tries to cheat the system, to bypass worthiness because he doesn't believe in earning power. He believes it should have been his from the beginning.
My God. I mean, I didn't think you could miss the point so spectacularly, but there you go. It's like going to the store to buy milk and instead you caught the plague. How do you fail that beautifully? So, firstly, you got the events out of order. You argue he discovered Aladdin before learning about the diamond in the rough rule. Not true. He didn't know this rule until he found the cave and the cave explained it to him. Secondly, he never had his ego hurt. Remember, he didn't try to go to the cave himself. He had that thief Kasim do it. Jafar even comments Kasim was obviously less than worthy, and he's the one who's telling Iago to be patient.
Patience, Iago, patience. Kasim was obviously less than worthy. Yes. Only one may enter. I must find this diamond in the rough.
He's calm. He's collected. He's not hurt or angry or upset. It's not about him not being worthy. It's all about him getting what he wants at any cost, regardless of if he's worthy or not. Jafar doesn't care why Aladdin is more worthy. That's irrelevant to him. It's not about being worthy to him. To Jafar, all that matters is getting the genie. Third, Jafar never tries to cheat the Cave of Wonders. He gives it exactly what it wants. He only wants to cheat Aladdin, because once that lamp leaves the cave with Aladdin, it's easily stealable. Because remember, Aladdin doesn't know the significance of the lamp. He doesn't know why it's important. He doesn't know what the lamp does. Jafar does. So all he's got to do is say, hey, kid, look, you go in there, give me that lamp. All your wildest dreams come true. Just bring me that lamp. Aladdin brings out the lamp. Ha, I got what I want. Screw you. And then throw him down in the Cave of Wonders, which we saw. Jafar never tries to be worthy of the lamp, nor does he want to be. I'm astonished by this take. What is it with you trying to make him into a victim? Genuinely, what is it with you trying to... He's not a victim! He feels hurt because he's not worthy. No, he doesn't. At what point does he go, oh man, why am I not worthy? I knew I was worthy. Keep moving.
Therefore, he uses Aladdin, the diamond in the rough. But to get him, he had to use cunning yet again, disguising himself as an old prisoner.
So why would you share all this wonderful treasure with me?
I need a young pair of legs and a strong back to go in after it.
Then he tries to kill Aladdin in the moment he gets the lamp, but fate, or Abu, intervenes.
Your eternal reward.
This moment is important. Jafar shows once again that he would do anything to get what is rightfully his, and that included killing even the one who helps him out. Luckily, karma visits him immediately.
Hey, what is it?
No!
This loss should have made him question himself, but he doesn't. Instead, he simply doubles down again.
On what? What does he double down on? His own evil? He was always evil. Dear God, how are you missing this? What on earth would he reflect on here? What was he supposed to learn or take away from this failure? Losing the lamp there was not a learning moment for Jafar. It was a moment of revelation. It wasn't a moment of revelation discovery. It was not a moment he had to take in the moment. Can you imagine that for a second? Like, I almost had the lamp, but then a monkey bit my arm and I dropped Aladdin and he stole the lamp from me. Man, maybe I was the bad guy all along. Maybe I really need to rethink my life. What part of that? This isn't Naruto where the hero gives a speech and suddenly the villain decides, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have been the bad guy. This is OG Disney, man. Villains in OG Disney get axed, bro. Oh my God. Okay, moving on.
Back in Agrabah, Jafar resumes his old tricks with Iago, this time offering him a cunning idea.
I love the way your foul little mind works.
With no lamp in hand, he manipulates with law and mind control. He invokes an obscure rule that would allow him to marry Jasmine and become Sultan by proxy. Compared to Frollo's tortured and repressed obsession, Jafar's lust is colder, more calculated, and rooted in power. He doesn't burn with desire like Frollo. Instead, he sees Jasmine and her beauty as one more asset to possess, one more symbol of his entitlement.
Marry the princess, all right? And you become the sultan.
The disturbing part is not just that he wants her, it's how he frames that desire. In his mind, Jasmine isn't a person. She's a trophy, the final piece of legitimacy that would cement his rule and stroke his ego.
Well, yes, because that's all Jasmine, Aladdin, and the Sultan and the Genie are to him. They're all tools. They're all objects. They always were. This isn't something he evolved into. This isn't something that he gradually learned to see Jasmine as. No, this is more of he's always seen them that way. You see, through his mind control, Jafar already had control. Like I said earlier, he controlled Agrabah. He was more powerful than the Sultan because he could control the Sultan. The Sultan was his puppet. So, like I said, I asked in the past, why does he want to become Sultan now when he already was in charge? My theory is this. I said that I'd bring it up later. Now it's later. It's later now. My theory is it was Jasmine. Keep in mind, the big plot point for Jasmine is she's about to become old enough to marry. And according to the law, she must be married to a prince by her next birthday. So once she marries a new prince, now that prince is going to become the new sultan. And that new sultan might not be so easy to control and manipulate as the current sultan. Plus, Jasmine clearly hates Jafar, so he felt the threat moving in. And with Jasmine close to becoming sultana and a husband coming who he can't control, Jafar probably knew, okay, my time's running out, so all this fun of manipulating the current sultan, I can't do that anymore. I've got to actually take matters into my own hands. And when the lamp plan fell through for him, the only other chance he had to be sultan was through marrying Jasmine. Then, once Sultan, he could do what he wanted with her in the kingdom at large. It's pretty basic. It's pretty simple. In fact, I would argue that's probably Jafar's big motivation. He's afraid of losing the power he has as vizier. He has power. He has control. But once Jasmine marries someone and she becomes sultana and her husband becomes sultan, he no longer has all the control anymore. He can't control Jasmine and this new sultan like he could control Jasmine's father. And if he loses that control, he's out. Plus, as Jafar pointed out himself, he could be banished or killed. He's scared, he's like, I need to get power now or I'm gone, So I think that's honestly his motivation. That would be probably the best motivation I could think of. The movie just didn't present that as well. And why didn't it? Because most kids don't really care about Jafar's motivation or justification for his actions. Many children who watch this movie are capable of looking and saying, this dude's evil. This dude's bad. And how do you know he's bad, son? How do you know he's bad? Well, because he's trying to hurt people to get what he wants. At the end of the day, whatever a villain's justification, if they're willing to hurt others or society to get something for personal gain, it doesn't matter what their personal justification is. That's still evil. Jafar never comes forward and says, look, here's the reason I'm doing this. He's not Thanos, guys. He's not here saying, look, I know what you think I'm doing is awful, but you got to understand, this is an injustice. There's a fool sitting on the throne, and I would make a better sultan. He never says that. And he also never says, I was cheated out of the throne secretly. My family was going to be the rightful sultans, but then this doofus's father came along and took it from my family, so now I want it for myself. I think it's only right that I become sultan. That never happens. That never happens. That's part of the reason why I think Toon right now is just basically rehashing the whole story. He's basically telling us the whole story verbally because he's trying to convince you, let's break down the whole movie and you'll really see it pan out. Actually, it's hurting you, Toon, because the more you walk through the movie, the more I'm able to point out at no point has Jafar said anything to indicate what you propose. Your claims are not founded. Let's keep going.
And something else. It's disgusting to even think about Jafar and Jasmine together, considering how old the creep is. The Sultan even knows this.
But you're so old.
This isn't even a thing on Toon, okay? This is actually something I've always thought about this moment when the Sultan says, but you're so old. I've always thought this. You are aware this is ancient Arabia. Honestly, the Sultan pointing this out is kind of uncommon for that culture and time period, seeing as child brides were not only a common practice in the ancient Islamic world, but is still practiced in some Middle Eastern countries today. In fact, you know what? I decided to look this up and found out that Jasmine in this movie is supposed to be 15 years old. She looks kind of she looks kind of mature to be 15, but beside the point. But in Quran 65:4, it lays out clearly that as long as she's old enough to menstruate, she's fine. Even Grand Mustafi of Saudi Arabia, I'm going to mispronounce this, Abdulaziz Al-Sheikh said, quote, "It is incorrect to say that it is not permitted to marry off girls who are 15 and younger. A girl aged 10 or 12 can be married. Those who think she's too young are wrong, and they are being unfair to her," end quote. So, yeah, the whole idea of him being too old for her and her not being old enough, yeah, the Sultan was pretty base for the time period, saying, maybe she shouldn't marry an old geezer like you. It's not, again, this isn't a criticism of Toon. I always thought this about this scene. I used to sit here and watch that and go, you shouldn't have a problem with this given the culture you live in, but obviously it's a Disney movie, it's a kid's movie. They're of course going to point that out, but whatever. What I'm getting at is the Sultan here is pretty awesome. Like he cares. You know what? Again, side tangent. I'm sorry. I know you're here to hear me rip on Toon, but I'm not here just to rip on Toon. I'm here to talk, and you like to hear me yap, right? Please say you like to hear me yap. I want to know that you like that. But something that I got to say about the Sultan is, given the ancient Islamic world, the ancient world of Arabia, this Sultan is so outside the norm of what you should expect. He cares about Jasmine's decisions. He cares about her wants when he could very easily force her into a marriage that she doesn't want. Keep in mind, he allows these princes to show up and wants them to meet her, and then she has the right to reject them. He even walks out and says, "Dear, you can't keep rejecting all these women." As the Sultan, he could say, "No, Jasmine, you're not rejecting this guy. You're marrying him because I said you're going to marry him because we got to secure our dynasty." But Jasmine says, "No, I don't like him." And Sultan goes, "Well, I don't like him. All right, I'll respect your decision." And he even says, like, I don't know where she gets it. Her mother wasn't this bad, like... Dude, you're Sultan. You could straight up control this thing, but he doesn't. He gives her autonomy. He gives her the right to choose. I don't think Jasmine realized how good she had it. And Toon pointed out earlier how Jafar just sees her as an object or a piece of or a sex object to him. To be honest, that's not an uncommon way to look at women for rulers of the time period. It was an ancient way of looking at women. You look at them as brides, you look at them as baby makers, you look at them as objects of sexual desire. There are lots of ways that you could look at women, and sometimes this was the way it was. So having the Sultan here actually accept Jasmine's position, allow her autonomy, and even try to protect her from Jafar by saying, "Look, man, you're too old for that. I get what the law might or might not say here, but I don't agree with this. I think that Jasmine shouldn't have to marry you." Dude, Sultan kind of based here. I know we see him as kind of a doofus, kind of a moron, but he's kind of base too. He stuck up for Jasmine when he found out that Jafar executed Aladdin. When Jasmine tells him that, Jafar executed Aladdin, he tells off Jafar for it. He could have just said, "Well, Jasmine, that's his right. He's my vizier. I trust him to make these decisions." No, he's like, "Nah, Jafar, you upset Jasmine and you killed a person without my consent. You cannot do that, man." Dude. Sultan's awesome. The Sultan in this movie was awesome. Can I just say that he was awesome. Okay. Sorry about my side tangent. Let's keep going. I've been going on too long. Let's go.
So when he refuses, Jafar doesn't argue. He simply hypnotizes him with his iconic serpent staff again.
A princess will marry me.
Princess will marry.
It's a recurring theme with Jafar. If people won't see his brilliance willingly, he'll make them. But just as he begins to tighten his grip, a new threat appears.
I'm afraid, Prince Abubu.
Whatever.
Aladdin's disguise threatens everything. Jasmine is drawn to this outsider, and Jafar immediately senses something is off.
Again, side note, I loved the scene as a kid. Would have given anything to be Aladdin in that moment.
Why? Because this wasn't part of the story he was writing in his head, the one where he earns Jasmine. He becomes Sultan, and he is finally recognized. Jafar's rage is personal. He feels robbed, and when he uncovers Aladdin's true identity, he doesn't hesitate. He tries to have him killed again.
Hold on. Whoa, stop. He doesn't feel wronged. He just knows his plans are in jeopardy. And plus, he doesn't even know Aladdin's identity here. He doesn't know that the prince is Aladdin yet. He just wants to remove Prince Abubu. Whatever. My point is, Toon, stop recapping the movie and focus on your justification again. You did great with Frollo. That part of the film, that part of your video is great. What the hell are you doing, man?
but Aladdin escapes and exposes Jafar's manipulation, shattering his staff in front of the Sultan.
Father, what's wrong with you?
I know what's wrong.
Once again, Jafar's version of the world is denied, and once again, he refuses to accept it. So he escalates. He steals the lamp outright, and this time, nothing is left to subtlety. His first wish is to become Sultan, a direct grab at legitimacy, because in his mind, if he can force people to see him as ruler, maybe that will finally make it true. He forces Jasmine and her father to bow. He turns the palace into a twisted version of itself, replacing beauty with arrogance. And yet, something's still missing. People still resist him. Jasmine defies him. Aladdin returns. That's when Jafar realizes being Sultan doesn't grant true control. Power handed to you can be taken away. So he makes his second wish.
I wish to be the most powerful sorcerer in the world!
Gah! Dude, you're too late! We already went through this. I explained all this earlier. I beat you to it, man. If you spent less time recapping the story and desperately trying to fabricate Jafar's need for validation and some sense of personal justice, we would have gotten here a lot sooner. Oh, and you're still getting shit out of order. He couldn't force Jasmine and the Sultan to bow until he wished to be a sorcerer, so yeah, whatever.
This moment marks a psychological transformation. Up until now, Jafar used magic to manipulate. Now, he uses it to dominate. He imprisons those who defy him. He transforms reality itself. He becomes a godlike force. He doesn't just want people to obey, he wants them to submit to fear, to know they are beneath him.
Stop it! Jafar, leave him alone!
How is that any different than what he wanted before? I'm just being honest, like, what evidence... Okay, so based on what you're saying, I could be wrong, but based on what you're saying, your argument is that Jafar at the beginning was cold and calculating, but he wasn't quite at this point yet. Only now that he's reached this stance does his power hunger start to show that he's going further and further beyond where he was. His justification no longer has relevance. Is that what you're saying? I could be wrong here. I'll admit I could be wrong. But I don't see how his position now is any different than his position earlier. I get the feeling that if Jafar's plan had worked in the beginning and he'd gotten the lamp from the very start, this still would have been the end result. I don't know.
Here, Jafar's lust comes full circle, as a perverted weirdo with a fetish for torture. He doesn't just imprison Jasmine, he changes her clothes, chains her at his side, and attempts to force her to be affectionate toward him in front of others.
A beauty such as yourself should be on the arm of the most powerful man in the world.
He doesn't woo her, doesn't try to earn her love. He commands it.
I wish Jasmine to fall desperately in love with me.
In Jafar's twisted worldview, love and desire are not emotional connections. They are things to be taken. This perfectly encapsulates his mindset: silence, submission, and objectification. For Jafar, that is the ideal partner. Someone beautiful, silent, obedient, a living accessory to his reign. And for a while, he thinks he finally got it.
I mean, sure, it's not really a motivation or justification, though, is it? Oh, look, I'll save it for the end, but there were better villains you could have touched on to discuss this.
But Aladdin comes to the rescue and challenges him again. Yet Jafar doesn't hesitate to raise the stakes once more. He transforms into a massive serpent, coiling around the street rat in a display of raw power and cruelty. However, Aladdin still wins, not through strength, but through psychology. He appeals to Jafar's one fatal flaw: his need to be the greatest.
Face it, Jafar! You're still just second best!
Aladdin tricks him into making his final wish.
I wish to be an all-powerful genie!
It works. Jafar becomes a being of limitless cosmic power and is instantly trapped in a lamp. Why? Because genies, by nature, must serve others. And in his obsession with domination, Jafar overlooked the price of omnipotence, eternal servitude.
Cosmic powers!
Come on, you're the genie! I love freedom!
This is where philosophy and irony collide. Jafar's downfall is not just poetic, it's structural. He sought freedom through power, but the more power he claimed, the more enslaved he became, to his desires, to his narrative, and finally, to the very rules he tried to cheat. Jafar's evil is not cloaked in righteousness like Frollo's. He never pretends to serve a higher cause, but in a way that makes him even more dangerous, because he doesn't seek moral justification, he seeks moral domination. In his worldview, if it's good for Jafar, then it's good. Period. There is no higher authority, no moral compass, no sense of empathy. And that's what makes him terrifying, because evil doesn't need to wear a white robe and quote scripture to be dangerous. Sometimes it wears a crown of self-importance and calls itself destiny.
You guys know what this is? This is an enormous word salad that is trying hard to sound smart and intellectual. But when you really take time to listen to it and think about it, it just makes no sense. It's like when a kid in high school is writing a bunch of big words on an essay in the hopes that it pads out a paper, and the teacher overlooks their nonsense because they used all the big fancy words. There's so much that does not add up about this whole thing. Why are you trying to compare Frollo and Jafar? This is apples and oranges. Further, why are you saying Jafar is more dangerous? I mean, I guess technically Jafar's a sorcerer, he can use magic, so yeah, by that justification, sure, he's more dangerous, but let's leave that aside. I would argue Frollo is not only more well-written, but more frightening and more dangerous to us today. Look, despite you trying your hardest, you have not proven Jafar had any justification beyond simple power hunger, but Frollo has a fascinating and complex justification. There are people like Frollo who use religion, politics, philosophy, or personal belief to justify doing heinous things. Jafar, meanwhile, is an evil bastard who stole a genie and used it to gain power, and it ended up being his downfall in the end due to his own desire for power and control. There are a lot of ways you could have approached Jafar, but you didn't do any of them. What you could have done, what I honestly thought you were going to do in this video, was compare what it means to have justification for a villain and not have justification. I thought you were going to look at Frollo and say, here's how he justifies his actions, but Jafar doesn't justify his actions. Let's compare the writing styles. That's what I thought you were going to do. Now you're saying Jafar had a justification. He felt cheated, or he felt like it was an injustice that he wasn't Sultan, and he was trying to right that wrong. And you're saying that's even scarier than Frollo, whose justification stemmed from his personal faith and sense of control. That's a leap. That is a leap.
Sometimes it believes so strongly that it deserves everything, it's willing to destroy everything and everyone to get it. That said, what happens when two villains with nothing in common on the surface follow different paths and arrive at the same terrifying destination? Let's step back and see what makes Frollo and Jafar so alike, and why their brand of evil is more dangerous than we ever realized. Across Disney's animated canon, few villains cast shadows as long or as disturbing as Frollo and Jafar. Not because of the magic they wield or the violence they commit, but because of why they commit it. On the surface, these two couldn't be more different. Frollo is a man of faith. Jafar is a man of ambition. Frollo acts in the name of God and purity. Jafar acts in the name of destiny and desire.
Himself. Jafar acts in the name of himself. It's not more complex than that. Stop making it more complex than that.
One wraps his evil in scripture, the other in logic.
Okay, time out. Time out, brother. Frollo didn't wrap his evil in scripture, because not one book of the Bible was turned to by Frollo. You ever notice that, by the way? Only Esmeralda and the Archdeacon look to actual scripture and biblical principles in this movie. Frollo prays to Mary for salvation, but that's it. And what do you mean Jafar wraps his evil in logic? What? What are you talking about? What logic? What do you mean? He wraps his evil in ego. He wraps his evil in narcissism. He wraps his evil in power and control. Jafar believes that to rule means you have power, so he's willing to do evil in the name of getting that power. Where's the He uses magic, for God's sake. Where's the logic? Is this a smear on theology, maybe? Like saying, one is based on faith, the other based on logic, and religion doesn't have logic? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. This makes no sense.
One demands obedience in the name of salvation, the other demands power in the name of superiority. But dig deeper and the similarities become chillingly clear. Both men believe the world is broken, and both believe they are the ones chosen to fix it.
Name one moment where Jafar claimed the world was broken and that he was going to make it right. Oh my. Toon, my brother in Christ, you didn't just fumble the ball, you passed it to the enemy team. Okay? Wow. At what point did Jafar say, this world is broken and I've got to fix it? At what point did he think, I'm doing the right thing by doing that? He's not Thanos. He's not fixing the world. He's not righting the wrongs. He is the wrong. This is painful. All right, please, let's wrap this up.
Frollo thinks his will is God's will. Jafar thinks his desire is destiny.
Citation, please. Could you please cite that source? When did he ever say that? Oh.
And in both cases, that belief justifies everything. Torture, manipulation, murder. You name it. They don't hesitate, because in their minds, they're not committing evil, they're correcting it. This is where the danger lies, not in the fire or the sorcery, but in the justification. Villains like Frollo and Jafar don't see themselves as villains, but as visionaries, as restorers of order, as victims of a system too blind to recognize their importance. And that belief, that unshakable sense of entitlement, righteousness, and destiny is what turns ambition into obsession and obsession into horror. The world must be remade, and anyone who stands in the way is either sinful or expendable. And so, in the end, we come full circle. Frollo and Jafar are philosophically committed to a version of reality where they are always right. And that's what makes them terrifying, because when evil feels righteous, it acts without guilt, escalates without pause, and burns everything in its path with the unshakable belief that it's doing the right thing. That is how to justify evil, and it's what makes Frollo and Jafar Disney's most unforgettable villains.
Oh, Toon, you're brain dead. This is so brain dead, and I don't understand. Your first half was so good. I love the Frollo portion of this video. Please, guys, go watch that portion. Link is in the description. Go watch that portion of the video. It's phenomenally well done. Then you go to this one. Okay, I'm good. Moment, need a moment. Sorry, okay. All right, okay. If your goal was to compare Frollo's justification with the justification of another villain who felt unfairly treated, why didn't you go to Gaston? Gaston feels like a perfect example. Gaston is the most handsome, talented, cool, strong man in town. They sing a whole song dedicated to how awesome Gaston is. He literally says, Belle is the most beautiful girl in town, and that makes her the best, and don't I deserve the best? Gaston's whole worldview is wrapped up in what he thinks he deserves. He's a spoiled brat. He's not used to being told no. So when Belle rejects him, we see him devolve from the hero huntsman of the town into a mad lunatic who leads an angry mob to a castle to kill a beast. Not because the beast is evil, but because Belle turned him down. We see a man willing to throw an innocent man into a loony bin, all because Belle turned him down. That is a much better exploration of a villain who believed that he was unjustly treated and now is willing to act out in response to that. Okay, but you know what? You may make the argument, but Gaston wasn't in the movie all that often. It was more of Belle and Beast story. Okay, we could go with that. What about, I don't know, Scar from The Lion King? Scar's another excellent example. He wanted to be king. Mufasa's his older brother, so Mufasa is king. Suddenly Mufasa has a son named Simba. Now he's not going to be king. He realizes that's taken from him, so he's resentful. He's angry. So what does he do? He plots to kill Mufasa and Simba. He justifies this to himself because he wants to be king. It's what he wants. It's what he desires. It's his actual birthright, which was taken from him by Simba. It was his actual birthright taken from him by Simba. And then we get to see the results of him being king. We see that he's driven Pride Rock to destruction, which goes into one of the themes of the movie, that just being king doesn't mean you get your way. Having power doesn't always mean that you can do what you want. Sometimes you have to take responsibility to others and to yourself. Scar did not. Simba had to learn to do that. You could have done Scar very easily. So we've got Gaston as a good example that you could have gone to. You have Scar that you could have gone to. There are better villains you could go to, and that's not even looking at anime. You could abandon Disney and go to other places like DreamWorks or anime, and you could find other characters or villains who justify their actions, who justify the twisted, evil, heinous things they do. And you could have really studied their justification. In this modern day, in this modern era where every villain needs a tragic backstory, every villain needs a rationale for why they do the bad things they do, you have a smorgasbord to choose from. And you chose Jafar. Now, it's not that you can't look at Jafar. It's not that you can't, but what you've done, I think, is all wrong. Instead of saying, here, let's take a look at a villain with a strong justification and how that justification warped who they are and what they did, versus a villain who was always evil and had no good justification, but how he could still be entertaining. You could have done that. Because, Toon, when I first found your channel, I thought that you were giving writing advice or storytelling advice. And I thought this would be a good way to do advice, to talk about, justification in a villain story versus no justification in a villain story. Is there a better way to do it? Is one superior to the other? That's what I thought. But no, you told great the justification of Frollo, invented a justification for Jafar, and then tried to claim that Jafar's was better. Of course you're going to say it's better because you invented that justification. This was incredibly silly. And some of the links you took to try to justify it were outrageous. Oh, this was a comedy. Oh, I'm going to say this. Jafar, in my opinion, is a much weaker villain than some of the other big ones in Disney. Largely because Jafar, to me, wasn't that entertaining. You compare him to characters like Hades or Ursula, who have these big, bombastic personalities that you just remember. Jafar is much more subtle. He's much more reserved. He didn't entertain me as much. Was he intimidating? Yeah, but only after he got the genie's power and, started being a sorcerer and throwing around these puns and actually getting to be a villain. Until then, he's just a slippery, slimy son of a gun. You know what I'm saying? And that wasn't as entertaining to me. Frollo, meanwhile, terrifying individual. I could do a whole video on Frollo. But you don't have to see me do a video on Frollo. Toon, the first half of your video was a phenomenal video breaking down Frollo. I would still tell my audience, go watch that first half, just don't watch past it. Because then you just trip on your way to the finish line. No, that's being too kind. You didn't trip. You grabbed the ball, ran for the end zone at the halfway point, turned around, apologized, handed the ball to the enemy team, and then drove home. And even that may be too kind. Anyway, I'm done with this. I've been talking for way too long. I know y'all are ready to go. Oh boy, I may have to take a break from doing Toon videos because these are getting silly. Anyway, thank you guys so much. I will see you in my next video. Take care.